Think about the last time you walked through a downtown area at night, or even during the day, surrounded by those massive glass and steel towers. On paper, it should feel like the peak of human achievement. It is clean, it is organized, it is safe. But if you are honest with yourself, there is a small part of your mind that feels a bit like a trapped animal. Maybe it is a tightness in your chest when you look up at a skyscraper that seems to lean over you. Maybe it is the way your pace naturally quickens when you walk through a long, concrete, empty underpass. It is that sudden silence that feels heavy, the way your shoulders subconsciously hunch up as if waiting for a weight to fall. You might tell yourself you are just tired, or that it is just the city noise. But what if I told you that your discomfort is not a flaw in your personality? What if it is actually proof that your brain is working exactly as it was designed to, millions of years ago? The truth is, we are currently living in a massive psychological experiment. For 99% of human history, our surroundings looked nothing like this. We evolved in the dappled light of forests, on the open curves of the savanna, near the irregular edges of water. Our eyes, our nerves, and our very sense of safety were calibrated to a world of organic shapes. And then, in a historical blink of an eye, we moved into boxes. We built cities of perfect 90-degree angles, flat gray surfaces, and repetitive, sterile patterns. To your modern, logical mind, a straight line is efficient. It is a shortcut. It is order. But to that ancient, deep-seated part of your brain, the part that has been keeping your ancestors alive for 3 million years, a straight line is something else entirely. In nature, there are almost no perfectly straight lines. When your ancient brain sees a sharp, hard, artificial corner, it does not see modern architecture. It sees something that does not belong. It sees a lack of information. Scientists call this visual stress. When we look at natural scenes, like a forest or a mountain range, our brains process the information effortlessly. Nature is full of fractals, patterns that repeat at different scales. They are complex, but predictable. But a modern city grid is the opposite. It is repetitive, but it is harsh. When you stare at a massive wall of identical windows or a perfectly flat concrete plaza, your visual cortex actually has to work harder. It struggles to find a foothold. It is like trying to climb a glass wall with your eyes. This effort creates a subtle, constant hum of neurological fatigue. You do not notice it minute by minute, but by the end of the day, it is why you feel hollowed out. It is why, even if you have done nothing but sit in an office, you feel like you have been in a fight. Because in a way, your brain has been in a fight. It has been trying to make sense of a world it was never built to see. We have created an environment that is a blue ocean for architectural threat, a world where the very shapes around us are constantly triggering a silent, ancient alarm. And the most fascinating part? We are only just beginning to realize how deep this goes. If you have ever stood in a vast, open, concrete square and felt a sudden urge to find a wall to lean against, you have experienced what researchers call phygmotaxis. It is a fancy word for a very simple, very old survival instinct. In the wild, an animal that stands in the middle of a wide open space is an animal that is about to be eaten. Our ancestors survived because they felt a natural comfort when they had prospect and refuge. They wanted a clear view of the horizon, but they also wanted a solid cliff or a thick tree at their back. But look at how we design our public spaces today. We build these massive, monumental plazas with nowhere to hide and nowhere to tuck away. We call it openness, but to your nervous system, it feels like exposure. It is why you see people huddled at the very edges of a park, or why the middle of a giant lobby is always empty while the corners are full. We are biologically programmed to seek the perimeter, yet we keep building cities that force us into the center. Then there is the issue of scale. Evolutionarily, we are used to things that are human-sized. A tree, a boulder, a cave entrance. These are things we can interact with. But a 50-story glass curtain wall has no human scale. It is a featureless, looming presence. When you stand at the base of a skyscraper, your brain cannot find a way to measure it. There are no details for your eyes to grab onto, no textures that suggest a way to climb or a way to hide. This creates a sense of awe, but it is often a cold, crushing kind of awe. It makes the individual feel small, insignificant, and vulnerable. It is architectural intimidation. And it is not just about size, it is about complexity. Think about a traditional old street, the kind with small shops, different colored bricks, window boxes, and little architectural surprises every few steps. As you walk down a street like that, your brain is constantly being fed small, manageable bits of new information. It keeps you alert, but in a pleasant, engaged way. Now, contrast that with a modern superblock. You might walk for 5 minutes past a single, continuous wall of dark glass or smooth gray concrete. To your brain, this is a sensory desert. When the environment stops giving us new information, our minds do not just go blank. They turn inward. We become more anxious, more self-conscious, and more stressed. Studies have actually measured the heart rates and skin conductance of people walking past these boring facades versus active ones. The results are always the same. The boring, repetitive architecture causes a physical stress response. Your body is literally telling you, "Get out of here. There is nothing for us here. This place is dead." But here is the real kicker. We do not just find these places boring, we find them threatening. Because in the natural world, something that is perfectly smooth, perfectly silent, and perfectly still is usually a predator waiting to strike. Our brains are hardwired to look for affordances, possibilities for action. A tree affords climbing or shade. A path affords walking. A giant blank concrete wall affords nothing. It is a dead end for the human spirit. It is an evolutionary stop sign that we are forced to ignore every single day. So, when we realize we are living in a visual and instinctual minefield, what do we actually do about it? We cannot tear down every concrete forest overnight, and moving back to the literal wilderness is not realistic for most of us. But understanding where this urban threat comes from is the first step to taking back your psychological power. Since our nervous systems are starving for nature, we have to be intentional about how we feed them. If you find yourself feeling unexpectedly drained on your commute, try to look for the places the city planners missed. Look for an old wall covered in ivy. Watch the way weeds push through the cracks in the sidewalk, or just spend a minute watching the dappled light filtering through a single street tree. These are not just nice views. To your brain, they are vital signals of life and safety. When you are choosing where to sit in a cafe or a public square, do not fight your instincts. Find the corner. Put your back to the wall. Give yourself a view of the entrance. By acknowledging these ancient needs instead of ignoring them, you lower the background noise of your own anxiety. We can also look toward the future of how we build. There is a growing movement called biophilic design. It is the idea that buildings should not just be containers for people, but extensions of the natural world. We are seeing architects start to use more timber, more organic curves, and more integrated greenery. They are moving away from the dead surfaces of the 20th century and moving toward textures that our eyes actually want to explore. The blue ocean here is not just about identifying the threat, it is about designing the cure. As a creator, or a thinker, or just someone living their life, the direction is clear. We need to advocate for spaces that treat us like biological beings, not just economic units. Think about how you can rewild your own immediate environment. Add irregular textures to your home. Use lighting that mimics the cycle of the sun. Break up the straight lines of your desk with something organic. It sounds small, but to that ancient part of your brain, it is a massive relief. We do not have to be victims of the architecture we created. By understanding the urban threat, we can start to demand and build a world that actually feels like home. A world where we can finally stop looking over our shoulders and start looking up.